Good day and welcome. Today's August 6, 2025. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. You're watching The Pipeline. I've got my usual crew of homies here. Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford, who is on he's got only 2.5 days of work left until he's officially retired for the second time.
Officially retired for the second time, yes. Drink it all in. The cup is running dry.
But like every good former employee, he intends to be reincarnated, come back as a contractor, still doing work with us.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
And another former opinion editor who did the same. We've got Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
It's hard to escape.
It's actually a career track.
Yes.
I thought it's just because you love me.
That must be it.
All right. And coming back to us after an absence of a few weeks, we missed her dearly. We've got Erika Barootes, who is apparently got gas.
Okay, that's a weird thing for people.
Look over your shoulder.
I know. I understand what the sign behind me says.
Yeah.
I don't have gas. I'm in the presence of gas.
All right, Erika.
Still be
who's in the presence of gas?
Yes. And what is my title, Derek? What do I do?
I'm not doing it. I just gave up on it.
It's on the screen.
Ah, yes. Department Head of Applied Politics and Public Affairs at Macamee College. I knew that, not because it was on the screen.
Yeah, and I'm just here for Nigel. That's why I'm here today. As his farewell.
Girl, you break my heart. You break my heart. Okay.
I think it's good for ratings that I keep you in your place.
I think people like it.
Yeah.
I think they do.
So let's continue.
People like the mean girl. All right. Well, we're going to talk about why are Federalists so terrified of the Alberta flag? The self-appointed leader of the Federalist stay in Canada side of the forthcoming maybe sort of referendums, and former Deputy Premier to Alison Redford, Thomas Lukaszuk, was caught. I don't know if caught's the right word, but he's bragging about it. But we certainly picked it up once Cory Morgan found it. Caught petitioning Safeway and other stores to take down that symbol of hate on a flag. No, it's not that flag. It's the Alberta flag, old blue. Ordering that they have to take down this symbol of fascist oppression from stores, lest people look at old blue and seethe with hatred at Ottawa and decide to become their own country. We'll talk about that. A pipeline, if necessary, but not necessarily a pipeline. Mark Carney saying one thing, but setting up potentially another. Playing on kind of that old Canadian political trick of not appeasing those who need to be appeased, but not really quite doing anything. Speaking of which, where we're going to start, a Palestinian state, if necessary, but not necessarily a Palestinian state. Nigel, just last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney saying that Canada will intends to recognize a Palestinian state. He hasn't formally recognized a Palestinian state yet, but attaching certain conditions to it that make me think that if he does keep those conditions, he'll never be recognizing a Palestinian state. That's how I read it.
Well, that's called having your cake and eating it too. And that seems to be I believe we're going to go into this a little bit more deeply later, but by and large, Mr. Carney says what he would like to happen and then places conditions on it so that he's got an escape route if things change. Now, in this case, it's not Indigenous agreement and Quebec agreement that he's looking for. That would be a pipeline. But he wants to set 3 conditions on it. That Hamas would not be part of any forthcoming, going forward, any Palestinian state, that the Hezbollah in West Bank will also disarm, which to some extent they've been disarmed, but they don't like it. I can't imagine that they would ever want to stay that way. So, you put these conditions out there, and maybe they happen, maybe they don't. And if they don't, so, well, you tried.
Cory, So yeah, he did. Carney put down these conditions, and as did some heads of other governments around the world. Hamas has to be disarmed. Has to play no role in the government. The hostages have to be released, and said Palestinian state has to recognize the right of Israel to exist. I mean, where the border should get drawn, to some extent, is a fair debate. To some extent, is a fraught debate. But these conditions are actually, under those conditions, if they were theoretically possible, I'd say, okay, actually, those are pretty reasonable conditions, I think, to recognize a Palestinian state. The Palestinians have to recognize the Israeli state and not go to war for maybe a period of, 2 weeks, if they can do that for 2 weeks.
New record, yeah.
Yeah. They're actually fairly, I think, reasonable demands to make that, if met, I think would be, a good, grounds for which to recognize a Palestinian state. But I don't think there's any chance. Like, Hamas is, the Gaza Strip looks worse than Tokyo or Dresden right now. It's gone. And they're still fighting. They're not disarming. They're not giving up the hostages. I'm not really sure. The only reason I can see them continuing to fight is it's imposing an increasingly great political price on Israel and the Israeli government, turning world opinion against them. Not necessarily in favor of Hamas, but at least against the Israelis. That's the only reason I can see why they still keep fighting at this point.
Well, they're ideological maniacs, and you're asking for reason from them. I mean, their response to having world countries saying, okay, let's reward them for their terrorism if they would just be nice again, and we'll give you your own state. And what they do, they released videos showing them torturing the prisoners they still have in custody right now. Like, Carney is no fool, whatever he may be. There is no reasoning with Hamas. Hamas made it pretty clear right off the bat, no, we aren't disarming. No, we aren't releasing. They extended a nice big middle finger to the countries asking for that. And they want nothing less than the complete obliteration of Israel. So I don't know where this is going to end, but Carney won't. He's just trying to play both sides, and he's playing weak. I mean, what do people expect? Israel's supposed to just leave them there to keep firing more rockets and grabbing more hostages? The reality is the world's got to start calling for Hamas to bloody well put the blame where it is. Well, this is only going to end when they stop.
The Arab League just came.
Yeah, they've come out. Yeah,
I mean, that's a big blow against Hamas when even the Arab League is like, guys, the jig is up. Time to go home.
The other thing that has to be understood, as you pointed out, most of Gaza is rubble, and guess what? Hamas is still hiding hostages and still launching rockets. Gazans are complicit. Not every one of them, but let's not pretend that Hamas isn't operating without the blessing of a large part of the civilian population as well. And I see it's showing clearly that it doesn't seem to matter how much abuse they take, the civilians won't turn on Hamas. But this isn't ending until Hamas is done. There's no other way about this.
Erika, if, say, Palestine, and I put that in air quotes, there's two Palestinian governments. There's Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and then arguably Israel as well as a third order of government there. But if Palestine, if we can call it that, disarmed Hamas did play no role. The hostages are released, and they agreed to recognize Israel. They probably wouldn't recognize their claim on Jerusalem, but let's say they recognized everything but, and that was just left as a point of negotiation for later. Do you think, Carney and others would be right in recognizing a Palestinian state if those conditions could be fulfilled?
Well, I think if we're talking about sunshines and rainbows, so sure,
we are here. We are.
Yes,
yes.
and so sure, but like cart before the horse. And right now, we, like you said, but all the three of you, separating Hamas from the state of Palestine is, I see it pretty unrealistic in the current state. There's lots of what ifs that have to happen in order for that. So for our prime minister to come out and say, okay, all of these conditions, this, and this, which an average Canadian isn't going through the fine print of these conditions that are hypothetical to some degree. He's now sitting here saying all that Canadians pick up is I am going to recognize in September with other nations. And I will say there is some Eastern or Western European countries that are also saying the same, but that we're going to recognize Palestine as a state. I can tell you from the left-leaning people that I know and follow on social media, that was the whole message, was like, regardless of that fine print, the prime minister is going to recognize Palestine as a state. And I think what that did was really divide our country even more. It also, resulted in tariffs from the South to respond to that decision that our prime minister premeditated or preemptively stated before even getting to September. So sure, I think that we could say that's an appropriate thing if A, B, C, D, E, F, G happen. I just think we're still at A. And so for what this means for Canada, we've already got some backlash of taking that position. I also think it's setting a tone where, if you've ever gone to Ottawa in the last year or so, the disruption of their protests. We've seen it all across the country. We've seen post-secondaries be taken over to stand up for the Palestinians. The fact that we are Canada and we have taken an aggressive position on either side is disappointing to me at best.
I do agree with that. I mean, I think we've got to get out of the habit, particularly of those of us on the more conservative side, of thinking we actually really have a stake there. We don't. It's a different country. It's a different part of the world. I wish everyone there well. Wish them peace. And
for everyone, there's both sides have been very guilty of hurting innocent people. And I think us taking a stance either way, especially when you said to what benefit of us.
Exactly. What is in our national interest? What national interest is being served? So, Nigel, this raises the question, why? Why did Mark Carney say this? I think Erika is correct that most people just heard Canada is going to be recognizing a Palestinian state. I think how many people see people do this all the time? They just read the headline on X or wherever. They don't read the story. If you read the story, I actually don't think it's a particularly unreasonable way to go about it. I don't think there's any chance Hamas ever agrees to it because it's too reasonable. They won't agree to it. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, why? Is it simply the domestic voting audience that he's trying to appeal to? The combination of kind of campus lefties and the large and growing Islamic vote in Canada by saying this, but then attaching conditions to it that make it highly unlikely that if he sticks to those conditions, that Canada will ever be recognizing a Palestinian state in the near future.
Well, I think after the events of October the 7th, 2023, nobody wants to see the Hamas rewarded with its own state. But Carney is correct. Mr. Carney, I should say, is correct in this much, that a two-state solution has always been Canada's policy, even during the ministry of Stephen Harper, who was famously very, very pro-Israel, and therefore by definition opposed to Hamas and Hezbollah. He was, I pulled it off the files here. He made this statement in West Bank during an interview back in 2014. And he said, let me just say the position of the government of Canada, I think, as you know well, is we favor and indeed believe that these matters can only be resolved through a two-state solution with two states. And of course, he here claimed his conditions, which are essentially the same as Carney's, just differently worded. Two states that are viable, prosperous, secure, democratic, and living in peace. So this has always been the Canadian position. Mr. Carney, why did he say it now? That puzzles me deeply. I have a theory, but it isn't actually worth much. Why did he say it now when we were in the middle of tariff negotiations with the United States? First, he encapsulated supply management into law, and then he said he was prepared to recognize the Palestinian state under certain conditions, knowing full well that President Trump, A, hates supply management, B, is strongly pro-Israel. Why would you poke him like that? at such a sensitive time. Like it was the day before the July the 31st, and the time limit there. So all I can think of is that perhaps Mr. Carney thought there isn't going to be a deal anyway. We're never going to close the gap on steel and aluminium tariffs. So I'll pick up a little bit of free goodwill from people who don't like me by saying that under certain conditions, I'm prepared to recognize a Palestine state. Maybe he even thinks that's the right thing to do. But if he does, well, I guess other prime ministers have thought the same thing under the same kind of conditions that he outlined. He didn't think there was a big political cost in doing so.
Well, okay, before we move on to the pipeline side of things, Cory, I still haven't found a satisfactory answer to why he's done this. I'm not sure I agree with you, Nigel, on the Trump thing.
Disagreement on the pipeline is a good thing,
Yeah.
Derek.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree on that. Like, look, Israel, the United States is not acting in its national self-interest on the Israel question right now. It's in the United States' self-interest to have peace in the region. I don't think Netanyahu was a big fan of that. I think while he was appalled by the October 7th attacks, he also saw it as the perfect excuse to invade. I think I think it's pretty amply clear that he wanted to. And I think his intention is ultimately to annex Gaza and expand the borders of Israel. Like that seems to align with where he's going on this. But Canada's national interest is served primarily by getting a trade deal. That is by far the most important foreign policy goal for the Canadian national interest right now. And it's not in Canada's national interest to piss off Trump, but it's... well, I'm sympathetic to Trump on a lot of these things. I don't think that's necessarily his business about our foreign policy on that issue. So I don't think it was that. I think it's more likely he's trying to shore up a domestic Islamic voting bloc. It's a very, very large bloc in Canada. And by saying this, he's making them happy. But by attaching these conditions to it, he's making it unlikely that he would ever have to act on it and alienate Jewish voters, which have traditionally made up a large block of liberal voters.
Yeah, well, they made no bones about that. There was a couple Liberal members who said, there was a candid conversation with one who said, the demographics of my riding, I have to keep the Islamic community happy or I'm not going to win my seat. And before Carney came out with that statement on potential statehood for Palestine, it was said that he's dealing with caucus pressures. He has a number of his own members of parliament who were pressuring him to do this. They say he gave himself an out with the conditions that he attached to it. But yeah, there's a lot at play in this, and some of it's just pure politics in keeping his own caucus happy. The Jewish vote has always been a tiny vote, though they probably donate $1,000 for every dollar that an Islamic person puts forward. So you want the money or the votes? He chose the votes for now. But there's just less, when you're looking at it politically, there's less to gain in Canada by with something divided between Jews and Muslims, taking the Jewish side versus the Muslim one.
Well, we're going to... I think we've got a nice, neat theme here. We're kind of Canadian people in Canadian media, especially columnists, do this way too often. I'm guilty of it twice today. Paraphrasing William Mackenzie King and saying conscription if necessary, but not necessarily conscription, which really was just the most Canadian political thing to say ever, which is why we use it so often. It's this equivocation of not having to really take one side. The Canadian generals in the Second World War were demanding conscription. We need more troops, but there was huge opposition to it in Quebec. So we had conscription, sort of, but only volunteers would actually go fight. The conscripts would stay and, guard a warehouse in Quebec City somewhere, before the ships leave. So, yeah, a Palestinian state if necessary, but not necessarily a Palestinian state. Same goes, I think, for pipelines. Nigel and I were talking about this morning. He's brought forward, he said, we're going to build pipelines. We're going to be an energy superpower, and that includes oil and gas, which require pipelines now. We're going to build pipelines. Asterisk. If everyone agrees. As long as, yes, we will build pipelines. As long as Quebec is okay with it, as long as every single Indigenous group, even vaguely and peripherally affected, agrees to it, we'll build pipelines. I don't know. Eric, you could take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with Carney is what we're learning is he's a little mushy middle. He doesn't want to take sides on anything. He is trying to not be the bad guy in the conflict in Gaza. And so he's hoping that he'll be like, okay, here's all the conditions. Oh, sorry, Hamas couldn't separate themselves from the Palestinian people or couldn't remove themselves from this conflict. Therefore, don't blame me, blame them. I think the same thing is, oh, I'm going to be pro energy, like renewable and traditional. But if it's going to be someone's fault, it's going to be Quebec's because they won't give you market access, or it's going to be the Indigenous that are going to, stomp and scream and fight, saying that they're not getting their fair share or whatever it is. And so I think he's trying to be something for everyone and half baking all of these policies that he's announcing or positions he's announcing. And the pipelines where we've already seen his first meetings with Indigenous groups, mainly in northern BC, have basically said, like, nice try, guy, but like, we're not going to entertain this. See you later. He can now point to them to be the bad guys. And I think that's what he's trying to set up. He's trying to be this prime minister for everybody, and he's going to end up being prime minister for nobody.
Cory, I don't know. We haven't seen, we have seen a bill on this, actually, the national infrastructure priorities, whatever the bill
Building Canada Act.
The Building Canada Act, yeah. We've seen something, but it still seems nebulous. We haven't had the application for a pipeline come in yet. But requiring essentially unanimous consent of everyone gives everyone a veto. And when you have a veto, you could demand so much more, to the point where it might not even make sense to go forward. Provinces should be consulted, I guess, for pipelines going through. I don't think that's unreasonable. First Nations should be consulted. If it goes through their land, there should be some benefit to them. But if everyone's got a hard veto, it ups everyone's negotiating power to the nth degree, to the point where the proponent of is facing so many roadblocks that it could be damn near impossible to make a profitable case to do these things.
Yeah, he has to, again, it's an effective theme. He's got to show a stance, yes or no, because this wishy-washy thing, companies aren't going to commit billions to that. He's got to stand up and define the difference between consent and consult. Sean Fraser, his own minister, dared to do that, a couple of months ago, and he got pilloried for it and apologized because he actually stated the law that, I'm sorry, but we don't need consent from Indigenous people. We are obligated to consult. And they went bananas, and he retracted it and apologized, but he was absolutely right. So if they can't even say it out loud, no company's going to put the money in, no application's going to come. And I fear what he's building up is he's an ideological leader as well, though he can say, well, look, I tried, but it'll be similar to like Justin Trudeau. There's obviously no business case because no private interest has stepped up. And he'll lay it on that rather than the reality that nobody in their right mind would invest in that climate. Why spend hundreds of millions, possibly billions on the studies and the applications and all of that, only to be hitting a brick wall as other companies have done?
Nigel, I think building off what Cory said, I think in both cases, recognizing a Palestinian state on pipelines, I think he actually wants a no on both. I think, just judging by what he's set up as the criteria for both, he just doesn't want to be the one to say no on a Palestinian state. Hey, look, I want to recognize a Palestinian state. I want to go there. But look, these are the reasonable conditions I set out. Hamas won't disarm, etc., etc. Sorry, it wasn't my choice. That was them. Similar on a pipeline. I think he wants a no because we know he's got a long ideological track record. He's written books on this stuff. Was he a sudden convert to pipelines? No, he's a sudden convert to political reality. And if you want to keep Alberta in Canada, you can't just say no pipelines. If you want to appear to be the reasonable, moderate guy who's not as crazy as the ideologue Justin Trudeau, you can't just say no to pipelines. But he can go through this, set up a new set of roadblocks, to the point where other companies aren't willing to go forward. They don't have to be rejected. They're going to say, hey, these roadblocks we just can't get through it. And then they withdraw, as Cory said. He is not the one saying no to pipelines. It's just, those pipelines couldn't meet these reasonable conditions that I've set out. I think this is actually just very smart politics. This is 3D chess, that he is able to get a no on these things he wants a no to by just setting a line that he knows no one's going to meet.
On those two particular items, I think you may be right. I mean, before you came in this morning, we were having a discussion about sometimes just doing nothing until you're absolutely forced to do something is smart politics. The issue I have with that is that sometimes you want a politician to actually say, this is what I believe in, and although there is opposition, I am going forward. One of the things that is helping us right now is that steel and aluminium accepted, a lot of Canadian exports are presently protected by the U.S. and Mexico-Canada trade agreement, otherwise known as CUSMA, and it is a successor to what? To the North American Free Trade Association, which Brian Mulroney won for us back in the 1980s. Well, if Brian Mulroney had taken the Carney-esque approach to politics, he would have probably found a reason not to complete the negotiations that led to NAFTA, because a lot of people didn't want it. The unions were dead set against it. The NDP were campaigning on it. The Liberals didn't like it. But Mulroney stuck to his guns. He got NAFTA, and today we have the advantage of that through the legacy treaty that still protects some Canadian exports from the tariffs that Mr. Trump has applied over and above. So there is a value to a politician believing in something, going forward, making it happen, making it work, and staying the course. What we see from Mr. Carney is actually a recipe for the Canadian drift that we have been experiencing certainly since the start of Mr. Trudeau's coming to office back in 2015. It's getting us nowhere. It's taking us nowhere. Maybe if you actually want to build a stronger Canada, I think Mr. Carney may find he's going to have to be a little stronger himself.
But how did Brian Mulroney's prime ministership end? He did take big, bold gambles. It paid off on NAFTA, but he also took a big, bold gamble on the GST, and ultimately that policy did endure. It endures to this day. It was wildly unpopular, but in hindsight, everyone agrees that was a no-brainer fix to the economy and the finances of the country. He took big, bold gambles on the Constitution at Charlottetown and at Meech Lake. I think they were well-intentioned, but they were terrible and rightfully defeated. But they ultimately blew up his political coalition and left him politically radioactive until pretty much near the end of his life. Making big, bold decisions, I think, is the reason you should be in politics, to change things. But it invariably, I think, shortens your political life. It's going to make you unpopular. It's going to limit your time in office. It's going to limit how many people like you. If your goal is power over the long term, the more indirect, some would say cowardly approach, but the indirect, maybe more it's the Sun Tzu indirect approach. Perhaps that is better. I'm not sure Brian Mulroney is a great example of big political gambles paying off very well.
Well, it paid off for the country. I mean, when you're choosing a prime minister, you're going to either pick a guy who wants to be the prime minister, or you can pick a guy who wants to get something done. And the guy who wants to get something done may well pay the political cost. You use up your political capital, and then you disappear. It's unfortunate. But, I've never been a big Brian Mulroney fan, but right now I can see where what he did is paying off for Mr. Carney, of all people.
Erika, this might be a good pivot to where we're going to go. I've said that Mark Carney is, on both Palestine and pipelines. He's putting up these conditions that he doesn't. I suspect he doesn't think will be fulfilled, and these ideas can be shot down not by himself. He could say, it was out of my hands. Some would accuse Danielle Smith of doing the same thing with Ottawa. She has put down conditions by which Alberta would be happy and content in confederation. That's ending equalization essentially to Quebec and Ontario, that we build pipelines, we end Ottawa's meddling in areas of jurisdiction under the guise of the environment, etc. She has her 7 big conditions, or 11 if it's parsed out more. Some would say that she knows Ottawa. I've read some of these lefty columnists who say she knows Ottawa will never say yes to these things. I always consider those to be an extremely low bar for accepting rule by Ottawa. That, yes, of course, we should not be funding Quebec from Alberta tax dollars. We should not be allowing Ottawa to meddle in our provincial jurisdiction, etc. For me, those conditions are not enough to make me content with Ottawa rule. But she's been accused, and I can see where they're at least coming from, of maybe similarly setting up these conditions that she knows cannot be fulfilled, and that acts as a cause for her potentially to come out in favor of an independence referendum at some point. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think a few things. First off, she is playing by the rule book of how the Constitution is structured, where in this case with pipelines, the federal government, to many of our points, is consulting versus consent, working if the provinces are asking for it and they're okay, like that's their natural resources, falls to the province. So I think she's playing the game a little bit more by the playbook, where the jurisdiction of those national projects or our international relations is up to the jurisdiction of the Prime Minister. So I do sympathize with what you're saying on, is it, pot calling kettle black? I actually don't think it really is as clear as that, because she's looking at things that should be reset to ultimately get back to, say, equalization, where the province are equal partners to the federal government, where each of them stay in their own lanes. So, but to your point, is it ever going to actually, is an equalization formula change really realistic? Who knows? But I would
even
say
Poilievre says he won't change it. So
no, or looking at different things. So yeah, and so where I think Alberta is going, and I think where we want to take the conversation is, okay, what does that mean for Albertans? I mean, I still get really happy that she's standing up for that, because there's other provinces that do. I'm in Saskatchewan, where I was born and raised right now, and they feel the same way. They're just not as good about advocating for it vocally on the national stage. So we'll see how that plays out. She's also making very bold moves here that could play out really well for her or not. So I think we also were foreshadowing Alberta from some of the Brian Mulroney decisions, how healthcare reform is going to play out, how looking at some of these exploring pension, that kind of flopped. Now we're looking at the provincial police and the Alberta Next panels. I'm actually going to the one in Edmonton on the 14th, so I should be able to report back how that lands. But either way, how we started this show is you talking about one of my least favorite politicians, or wannabe politicians, Thomas Lukaszuk. I don't care how you feel about federalism. I love federalism on how it's actually supposed to be constructed. But the fact that we have an individual that's trying to say that the Alberta flag is a negative thing is, I think, completely distasteful, and something that our viewers should be hearing more about to really educate themselves on what that means for unity and for our province.
Yeah. All right. We're transitioning beautifully. Cory, it was actually your tweet that brought this to my attention. You found... Okay, so just so people know, most people don't know who this guy is. I'm thinking, I don't know.
He was the first politician at the legislature I worked for.
Oh yeah,
he was the first politician. I worked for him.
Sorry.
Thomas Lukaszuk.
You worked for him?
Yeah, when he was the Minister of Education. My first job at the legislature. So it's a whole, yeah.
Thank God you found Jesus. All right. Well, okay. So just so people know, most people don't know who this guy is. He... I guess he was a progressive conservative MLA. When Alison Redford comes to power, wins in 2012, she makes him deputy premier.
With no other portfolio. Can we just mention that he
Yeah.
was the deputy premier with no other portfolio, basically giving someone a make-believe job so they'd be quiet?
Yeah. Generally, when you
I was
see
there, I can say it.
when you see a leader, a deputy leader of a party without a portfolio, it means they're probably not very good normally. But anyway, he fell out of that office with Alice Redford's collapse, and you have like a $20,000 phone bill or something while he's on vacation that he put the taxpayers, and so he was out. He lost his seat in 2015 when the NDP came in, and I don't know if he's had a job since. I think he's just been on Twitter.
I don't know how he's been paying his bills. Maybe Stacey makes a lot. I don't know.
I don't know how but I'm not aware of.
If he's a kept man, that's his business.
Yeah, but as far as I know, he's just been tweeting for the last decade or so. But he has fashioned himself, Captain Canada here. He is, so he was up to something. You found it. We've done a bunch on it since. Just tell people exactly what happened.
Yeah, and to be fair to Lukaszuk, and I find him as odious as most of us here do, it wasn't him who decided it was a good idea to crap on Alberta's flag. It was one of his followers on his Facebook group I guess I got to give some more backstory. Lukaszuk is trying a counter petition to the independence movement to hold a fake referendum, which would just say we're all happy we're going to stay in Canada, which doesn't change anything. It's like a trolling move. They have a book that they call, or a Facebook page they called Forever Canadian, where they were organizing and gathering other members to push this petition and get it going. And I just checked it out, and I scrolled my way down, I guess morbid curiosity, and I found this posting from one of their supporters who had put a picture up on that group days before saying, I'd found this Alberta flag hanging in a Safeway and Medicine Hat, and I complained to the Western managers, and they pulled it down, and we got to stop, we got to get these symbols torn down of this separatism and this terrible things, the Alberta flag. Part of why I lay this on Lukaszuk's feet is, hey, if you're going to head the movement, you wear what your supporters do, and you control their communications on a page that is representing you. I mean, you can't control this one dingbat, but
okay, this wasn't Lukaszuk stuff.
No,
I had thought he was pushing.
No. So if he'd done that 5 days before, by then somebody should have said, we might want to pull that off of there before some clown like Cory Morgan spots it and throws it out on X and completely embarrasses you. This went bad to the point that they shut down that Facebook page. Lukaszuk has reopened his old campaign page from 2014 to use as a new Facebook hub to try and rejuvenate, because you don't attack the symbol of a province. I mean, symbols are important. They're they're attached to people. You can attack the independence movement. You can attack the individuals. But when you start besmirching the flag of Alberta that had the exact opposite effect of what they were looking to do, but it does show the mindset of the following, because it wasn't just this gentleman who did that to Safeway, which, by the way, Safeway put it right back up once the backlash hit them. I think they just wanted to sell groceries. They didn't want to get in the middle of them. Yes, it was just a flag. But it was all the other people commenting below, gee, where do I contact my local Safeway? I better do this for other businesses. Like, that also started to show, and that's why they had to get rid of that Facebook page, because it's not just one nut. It's Lukaszuk's gang of little elbows up minions started going after the Alberta flag. And they actually had to crash their whole page to get out of the mess they stepped in. Yeah. It says a lot about how well organized this little movement is, too.
Erika, okay, so Lukaszuk, I guess, wasn't behind the campaign itself to remove Alberta flag. So I
thought the same, but that was because I read the same.
But it is his organization, and I half agree with you, Cory, that you have to wear what your supporters do. I half don't. I mean, like, anyone who's ever been a part of a big movement or in a political party knows you've always got some nutters. But if someone goes particularly far off the reserve, you've got to make the point that, no, that guy doesn't represent us. I think that's fair. And you don't have to do it for every little asshole who says something stupid. But if you've got something and you've left it up there and your people are clearly ginned up and excited about it, no, you have to wear that if you're not going to condemn it. But okay, so coming back to you, because I didn't know you worked for Lukaszuk. But when I was discussing this,
learned so much.
Yeah, when I was discussing this with Nigel and Cory this morning, when we're figuring out what we're going to talk about, I thought, isn't it incredible that Thomas Lukaszuk is the face of the Federalist cause here? And I thought, if I was running like an Alberta counterintelligence agency, like Danielle Smith created the Alberta CIA and I was in charge of it or something, and I got to do all sorts of subversive counterintelligence things, I would have planted Thomas Lukaszuk as like the boss of the Federalist side. If I could have picked like which greasy, inarticulate, disreputable guy can I get to lead the other side so as to discredit that side, I'd have been like, ding, 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 Thomas Lukaszuk. That's the guy we want. How in the hell have the Federalist side seemingly accepted Thomas Lukaszuk as their captain candidate here?
Well, I think he's been positioning himself by seeking a job for the last decade of becoming very much distancing himself from what he once was, which was a red Tory, to a pure red liberal. And so he has been very vocal, hated Jason Kenney. Like when they were both ministers, they fought very publicly, as I think many might remember. He didn't like Danielle Smith ever. So this was a great opportunity to give someone that wanted it a platform. Now, I will say Thomas worked really hard. Like he was a very hardworking MLA, very good to his constituents. So ideologically, I disagree with everything that he said. But he is a hard worker. So I think from the left, they're like, well, this is a guy that will actually roll up their sleeves and pound pavement and be loud about it. And not being born and raised here or coming here at a young age, has a story that might be relatable to a lot of people. We want to get behind this movement. And so I can see on paper, or maybe just doing a quick search of him, but you're right. If I was running like Oppo research or like behind the scenes stuff, I also would put Thomas Lukaszuk there, because I think it actually does help contrast between Danielle Smith or even any of the individuals working towards looking at what separatism or independence would look like. I would love to have Thomas Lukaszuk as the alternative, because I don't think it helps their cause.
I guess just quickly before we go to our parting shots, Nigel, the Federalist conservatives in Alberta, I mean, a pretty big majority of Alberta self-identified conservative voters say they support independence, but there's a pretty sizable minority who do not, who are Federalists. And that's disproportionately higher number, the higher up the political food chain you go. You got, your Jason Kennys, etc. How do you think those guys are going to feel marching in Thomas's little band?
Well, they don't have to wait to march in his band to feel a bit awkward, because they may still be Federalists, but that doesn't mean they like the values that the Liberals are pushing and imposing on the rest of the country. They don't want that here in Alberta. So
They're just not willing to.
They're just really not quite ready to raise the revolutionary flag. But people aren't happy.
I think Thomas is going to be the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm planning on making him that.
I think he can.
He's the next Nenshi. That was a great gift for conservatives to have Nenshi as the NDP, and now we have Thomas leading loud and proud the.
You don't think one Nenshi's enough?
Oh, Fabio.
Hey, if it helps our movement, they can both do whatever they want.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's move it into parting shots, since you've been missing from us for some time. Erika, why don't you start?
Well, I was here when you weren't, just for the record, and we had quite a time.
That was 1 week, and you guys said, I know Derek's not watching. I watched.
No, I think you said we don't miss him. I think that was different, and I don't remember, but
yeah.
Something along those lines. Anyways, okay, my parting shot is not directed at you, Derek. It is directed at Elections Canada. I think it's actual complete bullshit and an insult to democracy that after what happened in the Carleton riding of Pierre Poilievre, that they weren't looking to streamline or make this process easier, or disregard, or make some quick changes in regulations or something to address the fact of having 200 candidates, all 180 or so that have the same CFO, the same official agent, all of these things, same signatures. Like, to me, that is not a democratic reflection of how Canada is supposed to work. And so I know that they've made this piss poor attempt to list all of the candidates. Now you have to write them in. But as a result, I will personally be going and scrutineering to make sure that every vote for Pierre and the Conservatives is clear and counted, and that they can't make excuses for misspelling or any of that sort. So I think it's like a half-assed solution to something that they should have addressed from the outset.
Okay. Nigel. Oh, no. You're going to be the last one today because today's your last parting shot. No. Cory.
Well, I'll be quick here. Then Travis Donrudge is the latest senior CBC reporter who is left and has been speaking out about the working conditions at the Mother Court there. And Catherine Marshall's his lawyer, and I caught her in an interview where she's speaking of some of the things she's learning about the working conditions. And this just says so much about the CBC. Apparently, they have designated crying rooms for staff within the CBC. If you're overwhelmed, if it's all just too much, if you just can't take it anymore, we shouldn't have you crying around the rest of you. So go to your designated crying room, have a good cry, and get it out. What a pathetic organization.
Well, that's what I call your office here, the crying room.
Well, I mean, when you make me cry, we have it right in public, in front of everybody. And if I did it here, you would
your office is
replay it.
Your desk is actually not. You're in the middle of the newsroom, so when you cry, we all hear it.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm going to take mine real quick. You get the last one. And it's not really a regular parting shot, but I just want to say I have become addicted to the Tucker Carlson podcast lately. It is so taboo and so in depth. It's he's just had the most incredible guests on, exploring. I'm listening to one on the Oklahoma City bombing right now. I thought I knew everything about it in quite a bit of detail. I'm learning all sorts of new stuff. So it's not a regular parting shot in the news. I just want to call attention to it. I normally don't listen. I don't consume a lot of American news content. I'm very much an exception to most Canadians who actually prefer American news over Canadian. But I just want to flag attention to that. That has become a phenomenal program to listen to. And for his final parting shot, we will have him back in the future, but his final parting shot as opinion editor of the Western Standard before he rides into retirement sunset, Nigel.
I feel like I should say something terribly profound, but really what I need to say is what an incredible 3 years it has been here at the Western Standard. What an honor to work, having started in newspapers that still had lead presses to come out where it's all online, but above all to present a conservative point of view to a conservative audience and have a chance to say what you want to say. Fildebrandt has never censored me. That I appreciate. So thank you for that, Derek.
You're not allowed to say that. Cut the camera. Thank you, Nigel. Nigel, no, it's been a profound privilege working with you. You've really upped the quality of debate and argument and polemics here. I am so glad to have had you, and we're very sad to miss you. But we're going to get you back in for the pipeline from time to time here, and we're still going to be counting on your columns.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Everyone in the comment sections, you should leave some nice thank yous to Nigel if you like him. If you don't like him, say some mean things. We like mean things here too. It's okay. All right. Nigel, Cory, Erika, thank you. Thank you, John, on production. Thank all of you who have joined us today. We appreciate the time you've shared with us. Thank you for everything you've done. Go to westernstandard.news right now. Click on subscribe. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for unlimited access to all Western Standard content. That is how we're going to keep the doors open and the lights on here at the Western Standard as the rest of the media goes through an apocalypse and turns into a desert of broken down presses and cameras. We'll survive because we've got people like you willing to put in a few bucks a month to support our work. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.